The hammer had not moved in 3,000 years. It rested at the heart of the celestial forum, suspended above a circular plinth of starstone, its surface etched with constellations that shifted slowly as if alive. Every species in the Alliance knew its name, Astroforge, and every species knew the law bound to it. Only the one chosen by the Queen herself, and judged worthy by the hammer, could lift it. Across centuries, emperors had failed. Warlords had shattered their pride against its immovable weight. Even gods, if the old myths were to be believed, had wrapped their hands around its haft and felt nothing but refusal. Now, under the cold, white light of 1,000 hovering sigils, Queen Veolyra of the Astrix stood before it, her silver cloak trailing like mist across the stone floor. She was dying. Her people knew it. The Alliance knew it. And worse, their enemies knew it too. Veolyra's species lived long, but even stars burned out eventually. The Queen's internal luminescence flickered faintly beneath her translucent skin, a sign every Astrix child learned to recognize with dread. Without a successor chosen by Astroforge, her throne would pass to the Council. And the Council was already fracturing. Let the final trial begin, intoned the herald drone, its voice echoing through the forum. Representatives from 17 species stepped forward in turn. The Car Dominion sent a warbeast engineered to crush moons. Its 4 arms bulged as it gripped the hammer. Nothing. The Ulrith sent a psychic sovereign whose mind could bend reality. The hammer did not even tremble. One by one, champions failed. The murmurs grew louder. Fear crept into the air like rot. Veolyra watched silently. She had already foreseen this outcome. What she had not foreseen, what no oracle had mentioned, was the human. He stood at the very back of the forum, wearing a simple gray utility jacket, hands shoved awkwardly into his pockets. His name was Elias Ward, and he was not a warrior, a noble, or a mystic. He was a maintenance engineer. Elias had been assigned to the forum 3 weeks earlier, repairing gravitic stabilizers and recalibrating ceremonial platforms. When the Queen's trial began, he'd been told to stay out of sight. He intended to do exactly that. Another failure, muttered Commander Threx of the car, baring his tusks. Your Queen's age ends in weakness. Veolyra turned her gaze toward him, unafraid. Strength is not always loud. The commander scoffed. Then, against all protocol, a small human voice cut through the chamber. Excuse me? Every eye snapped toward Elias. He froze instantly. 1,000 alien gazes pinned him in place. His heart pounded so hard he was certain the Astrix could hear it. Sorry, he stammered. I had a question. The herald drone hovered closer. Unauthorized speech detected. State your designation. Elias Ward. Earth. Facilities maintenance. A ripple of confusion spread through the forum. Veolyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. Speak, human. Elias swallowed. I've been working around the hammer, fixing the field stabilizers. And, well, everyone keeps trying to force it, pull it, dominate it. He gestured awkwardly toward Astroforge. What if that's not what it wants? The silence was absolute. Commander Threx laughed harshly. The tool chooses power. That is law. Elias shook his head. On Earth, the strongest tools don't care how hard you pull. They care if you understand them. A low hum rippled through the hammer. Veolyra's eyes widened, just slightly. You wish to attempt the trial? She asked. Elias stared at her, stunned. Me? No, this is way above my pay grade. The hammer pulsed again, brighter this time. Gasps echoed across the forum. The hammer responds, whispered an Ulrith seer. Veolyra extended a hand. Step forward. Every instinct in Elias screamed that this was a terrible idea. He was human, barely known in the Alliance, physically weak by most standards, politically insignificant. But something inside him felt steady. He walked to the plinth. Up close, Astroforge was enormous, its half taller than Elias himself. The constellations along its surface slowed, almost watching him. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his hand gently against the metal. It was warm, not heavy, not cold, just present. Elias didn't pull. He didn't brace himself or flex his muscles. He simply rested his palm there and said softly, "Hey, I'm not here to take you. I just want to help." The forum shook. Astroforge lifted itself. The hammer rose from the plinth as if weight had never existed, floating for a heartbeat before settling naturally into Elias's hands. He stumbled backward, shocked, barely keeping his grip. The constellations blazed. Alarms screamed. Energy surged across the chamber, forcing champions to their knees. Queen Veilira exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for centuries. "The choosing is complete," intoned the hammer itself, its voice resonating not through sound but through understanding. "The bearer is one who carries without seeking to rule." Commander Threx roared in fury. "Impossible. He is nothing." Elias looked at the hammer, then at Veilira. "I don't want to be a king," he said quickly. "Or a ruler. Or whatever this means." Veilira stepped forward, placing her glowing hand atop his shoulder. "That," she said gently, "is precisely why you were chosen." The days that followed tore the Alliance apart. Some celebrated. Others plotted. The Car Dominion mobilized fleets, declaring the trial invalid. The Council attempted to seize Astroforge by force. They failed. Wherever Elias stood, the hammer responded, not with destruction, but with balance. Gravitational waves redirected attacks. Energy fields collapsed without harm. Warships found their weapons refusing to fire. Elias never learned how he did it. He just listened. Veilira's health declined rapidly, but her mind was at peace. On her final day, she summoned Elias to the starlit garden overlooking the forum. "I was forged for rule," she said softly. "You were not, and yet you will be remembered longer than I." Elias shook his head. "I don't feel worthy." Veilira smiled. Neither did the stars when they first learned to burn. She placed a small crystal into his hand. "You will not be queen. Astroforge has chosen you as bearer, not ruler. The throne will pass, but the hammer will walk." "And what happens to me?" Elias asked. Veilira's glow dimmed, but her voice remained steady. "You will go where imbalance grows. You will remind the powerful that strength is not ownership." She looked at him one last time. "And when your people ask why a human was chosen, tell them this." Her light faded gently, like dawn slipping into night. Because humans carry weight every day and still keep walking. The Queen's passing did not shatter the Alliance. It reshaped it. Elias refused titles, palaces, and command. He returned to his old jacket, now repaired and cleaned, and traveled between systems in a modest ship, Astroforge resting quietly beside him. Where tyrants rose, the hammer became impossibly heavy. Where worlds suffered, it lifted effortlessly. Legend spread. Some said the hammer chose humanity because they were strong. Others said it was because humans endured. Elias knew the truth. Strength was never about lifting the hammer. It was about knowing when not to swing it. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy breathed easier, because the one who could wield ultimate power never wanted to rule at all. The stars were quiet when Elias left the celestial forum. No fanfare followed him. No armies marched at his side. The Alliance watched from a distance as the human boarded a small, unmarked vessel, Astroforge resting against the ship's inner hull, no longer glowing, no longer singing, at peace. Across the galaxy, the shock waves of the Queen's passing and the Hammer's choosing continued to ripple. Old tyrannies collapsed when their weapons failed them. Ambitious conquerors found their fleets drifting powerless, gravity bending just enough to deny them victory. Entire wars ended without a single final shot fired. And always somewhere nearby, there were whispers. The bearer passed through here. The Hammer judged us. He never raised it. Elias never called himself a hero. When asked who he was, he answered honestly. A human. An engineer. Someone who fixes things when they break. On a distant mining world torn apart by internal war, Astroforge grew light as air in his hands, stabilizing tectonic plates instead of smashing cities. On a throne world where a self-declared god demanded obedience, the Hammer became heavier than a dying star, pinning the tyrant to his own dais, unmoving, powerless. The lesson spread faster than fear ever had. Power resisted ownership. Authority bent toward responsibility. Years later, long after the Astrix had crowned a new ruler, long after the Council rewrote its laws, children across the Alliance learned a different story than the old ones. Not of kings chosen by blood or strength, but of a human who had stood before a weapon of legend and asked permission. In the quiet moments between journeys, Elias sometimes returned to Earth. He walked familiar streets. He watched storms roll in. He remembered a time when he had worried about broken machines instead of broken galaxies. Astroforge never left his side. One night, as he stood beneath a sky full of stars that had never heard of queens or hammers, the weapon stirred faintly. "Why do you carry me?" it asked. Elias smiled, resting a hand against its surface. "So no one else has to." And somewhere in the vast dark between worlds, the universe seemed to agree, because the greatest power ever forged had finally found the one being who would never use it to rule, only to protect.